Welcome back to the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. I'm Joe Noga, joined by Paul Hoynes. Hoynesy, the Guardians in Texas getting ready to take on the Rangers. Opener of a 3-game series tonight at Globe Life Field in Arlington. Slade Ciccone, 5-6 with a 4.50 ERA versus Nathan Eovaldi, 11-3 with a 1.76 ERA. Evaldi's been really good for the Rangers this year. Ciccone, his last couple of times out, a little bit of a stumble both times after a good stretch of getting deep into games. What's Slade Ciccone got to do to get back on track?
Yeah, he's got to finish hitters off, Joe. He has to keep the ball in the park and just has to use his spin. He has to improve his breaking ball pitches. The spin was not good the last time out. He got knocked around and it led to an early exit. So he has to improve his breaking ball pitches, and he's got to get ahead of hitters. He hasn't been getting ahead of hitters.
Yeah. Against Atlanta, kind of uncharacteristic was the way that Stephen Vogt described Slade Ciccone's outing. 4 2/3 innings, allowed 10 hits, 6 earned runs, struck out 3, walked 2. And his timeout before that, his previous outing against the White Sox, lost that game, only went 3 innings, allowed 8 hits and 5 earned runs in that game as well. Prior to that, he had gone on a stretch where he was going, at least 6 innings in a game and, looking every bit the part of a good middle of the rotation starter for the Guardians. Just, don't know if it's mechanical or the opposition or what it was. But like you said, the breaking pitches were not landing as effectively. And I believe in the one start, he said that, they were just taking all of his breaking pitches and hunting fastballs. So yeah, and you got Texas with a lineup that's pretty solid, but they've struggled this year. Just the Guardians need to take advantage in some way of a team that really has sort of fallen off over the last several weeks. Been a bit of a struggle for Texas, and in terms of their record, they were within a few games in the AL West just back in the middle of August, and now after a week or two, they've fallen back to about 10 games out.
Yeah, Joe. Ciccone. There was some talk. Vogt was asked about whether Ciccone may have kind of maxed himself out a little bit with several deep starts, just because he really hasn't been through a season like this where he's been in taking a regular turn in the rotation, except in the minor leagues. So that maybe fatigue was catching up to him, but he assured us that it was not. He didn't think it was not that. He just said he was, like we said, wasn't getting ahead of the count, wasn't working his spin pitches the way he wants to.
In the last 3 weeks, Texas has only won back-to-back games once. They beat the Yankees on August 4th and 5th. So, this is a team that's up and down and struggling to win and string games together. They were a half game out of a wild card spot on August 5th. And since then, they've dropped 5.5 games back after losing to the Royals. The guy you got to watch out for right now in that Texas lineup, all the big names making big bucks there. Kyle Higashioka is the one. We wouldn't suspect it, but he entered their game on Thursday batting .315 with a 949 OPS over his last 30 games or so. 4 doubles, 20 RBIs. He's really getting the job done for Texas.
Yeah, even when he was with the Yankees, Joe, he hit Cleveland pitching pretty well. He was kind of that sneaky power at the bottom of the lineup, could hit the ball out of the park. He did a nice job. He did a nice job for the Yankees, and obviously he's doing something right for the Rangers.
Before the game tonight at Globe Life Field, Hoynesy, the Rangers are going to dedicate a statue to Adrian Beltre. Last year, inducted into the Hall of Fame. Adrian Beltre, just one of those guys where wherever he went, he was sort of a beloved figure in Texas. Longtime guy, a 3,000 hit club, just a guy that everybody loved playing with. So Adrian Beltre getting a special recognition from the Rangers club.
Yeah, that's really cool. Definitely deserves it. A Hall of Famer, kind of under the radar Hall of Famer, Joe. Really, if you didn't really look at his numbers and study his numbers, you think Adrian Beltre bounced around a little bit, was with a lot of teams, but just a great hitter. Really, really really, accomplished hitter. Just don't rub him on the head, Joe.
That's the one thing. Who was it? Elvis Andrus had a thing about just like patting him on the head, and he'd freak out every time. The videos of that were really funny. I think I have a bobblehead of Adrian Beltre and Elvis Andrus, sort of that one play where they came together and were catching an infield pop, and it's just a real memorable guy. Where does he rank in terms of Dominican third baseman? Because the Guardians have a pretty good one on their side of the field.
Yeah, this is a guy with a lot. He was a pure power hitter. Definitely, he could hit for average. I just remember him swinging so hard he'd go down on one knee, and watching him hit balls out of the park when he'd hit ball when he'd make contact. And really, just a good all around player. I think he's probably a little above Jose right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, 3,000 hits,
Yeah,
five-time Gold Glover, two-time Platinum Glover, four-time Silver Slugger. He's certainly got the credentials. Baseball writers named him on 366 out of 385 ballots in 2024. So, certainly got the credentials to be in the Hall of Fame, and yeah, he probably ranks above Jose right now in terms of Hall of Fame clout, but. Jose's still got some time. We'll see
yeah.
where he goes with that.
I mean,
All right.
3,000 hits. You don't do that by accident.
No, and who knows if Jose can get. I doubt Jose can get to
Yeah.
3,000 hits. Just with the different kind of hitter that he is, besides Adrian Beltre, and the defense really just sort of separates him there too. You win two platinum gloves, you're doing something right.
Right.
But that's to take nothing away from Jose and the incredible story that he is as he continues his Hall of Fame trajectory in his career. All right, Hoinsey, lots going on in baseball in throughout the league, and a lot of it, some of it has an impact on the Guardians. Some of it will have an impact on the Guardians, down the line in the future with the collective bargaining agreement and possible TV contracts and things like that. We'll get into all that, but wanted to talk about Rob Manfred going on Sunday Night Baseball at the Little League Classic over the weekend, and he talked about two big things that made people, and he voluntarily talked about these things. He wasn't necessarily, poked and prodded and pushed on the issues of expansion and realignment. Those sort of go hand in hand, I think, in baseball. You want to get to 32 teams. I think the ideal number, as the NFL has shown, is 32 teams. I don't know how much that dilutes the talent pool for baseball. We've seen contraction in the minor leagues and how that has enhanced things for baseball in terms of accelerating the talent, getting to the major leagues at a younger age by contracting a few years back after COVID. Expansion right now looks like you're considering a couple of areas. Nashville, which would be a very popular destination spot for a lot of teams, possibly Portland, another team that's another city that's been talked about having another presence in the Pacific Northwest as well. What do you think of the idea of expanding to those markets or maybe some other markets?
Yeah, Joe, I think it's interesting. I think you have to, with expansion, you have to do it carefully. I really think you have to be careful, like you were saying, expanding the talent pool. We've seen it happen before, and I know Manfred, this has been a big thing for him. He wants to expand before his tenure as commissioner ends. So but yeah, Nashville you always hear about that. Nashville, Portland. Would they go back to Montreal? I know a lot of, whenever they've had an exhibition game there since the Expos left, they've drawn big crowds. Puerto Rico, we saw, I went to Puerto Rico when Cleveland played the Twins there in a regular season game. So yeah, really, I think there's a lot of, there's a limited number of cities that could could feel the baseball team, a big league team, and be successful, supporting it. And they've all been making their pitches for years to MLB. So we'll have to see when this reaches fruition.
Well, and also, think about this is taking into consideration the Athletics, who are right now sort of in limbo, moving between Oakland and Las Vegas. Right now, they're in Sacramento. You also have to consider what's going to happen with Tampa Bay and their stadium situation. Tropicana Field's still not going to be ready.
Yeah.
That's a club that might have to spend another year playing in another minor league stadium as well. Could you consider maybe Salt Lake City or another area like that out west, as you want to make sure that things are balanced as well? And that's, I guess, the big problem for me is there a demand for a Major League Baseball in cities like Portland, in cities like Salt Lake, in an area like Nashville, where Nashville's got a lot going on, I think. But is Memphis a consideration? Are there other areas that we haven't even thought about yet?
Yeah, that Nashville, it's got a rich minor league history. Nashville Sounds. I mean, there was a group there that was trying to with Tony La Russa was involved. A couple years ago. Trying to put a group together that would buy a big league team or be ready for expansion. So I think that's probably a good landing spot. But you bring up an interesting point about the A's and the Rays. I mean, those are kind of two nomads right now. I would think if before you talk about expansion, you've got to find permanent homes for them.
Yeah, are the Rays sort of the Jacksonville NFL version in the majors right now, in Major League Baseball right now? Jacksonville seems to be the team that the NFL wants to farm out to play games in London, to play games in Mexico, or wherever they want to play their games. Is that something that Manfred, if he wants to experiment with having games in other cities to try and see what the interest is there? I mean, they did just play a game in Bristol, Tennessee, where they had 100,000 people come out for it. Could they try and spark interest there by forcing Tampa to go play some of these games abroad? I think, aren't the Rays on the list for playing games in Puerto Rico once that comes around?
Well, I do not know that, Joe, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It's not that long, a trip to Puerto Rico from Florida. It makes sense.
Yeah, it's a lot of areas too. You think about the Gulf Coast as well, and what you would have to, in terms of a stadium, you would have to build there something with considerations for the weather and the heat and the rain possibilities. So just a lot of different areas. And you don't want to also take away, if you're expanding, like you said, you bring up the minor leagues, that they've already contracted minor league, clubs, but you don't want to also sort of trample on or step over the traditions of the minor leagues, especially in leagues like the Southern League, where those are, and the Texas League, even areas where those teams are so ingrained in their communities that you don't want to supersede those as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. It reminds me of, when they did do the contraction in in the minor leagues, they changed all the names of the leagues, and
Right.
then that lasted for about a year, and then they all went back to their old names. So yeah, there's a tradition there, and that tradition is hard to break.
Yeah, it's something that's important for sure. The only reason, if you do expand, that's the goal for Manfred. That's the obvious goal. He wants at least two more teams. He wants to have 32 teams. With expansion is going to come realignment. You have to realign the leagues. If you add two more teams, it can't just be, put one in the National League, put one in the American League, and everybody's happy. There's geographic and rivalry concerns with all of this. I think, I've seen some models and I've seen some proposals out there that have been pretty interesting. One of them has a realignment that would have the Guardians playing in a division with Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Washington. So no more rivalry games or no more season long multiple meetings and series against the White Sox, Twins, Royals, and Tigers. These are teams that Cleveland has played for 100 years against Detroit and Chicago. You've got to. You talk about not wanting to mess with tradition in terms of expansion. Realignment would really sort of fly in the face of tradition.
Yeah, definitely. That new, the so-called new division with Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Washington, Joe, that does nothing for me. I like the idea of Cleveland and Pittsburgh in the same division. I think that'd be great. I'd like, whenever they played each other in interleague play, I thought it was really, a good vibe, a good rivalry. But what is Cleveland doing with Baltimore and Washington? That doesn't ring a bell for me. I got to tell you, I'm a traditionalist, or to a certain degree, I'm a traditionalist, and just shaking up the whole, the 30 teams and like rearranging them in four. What are we trying to do here? What's the end game here?
Well, I think you want to keep the expanded playoffs. That's something that's important to Manfred because that's a huge moneymaker, and it would realign things. You would have, 8 4-team divisions in sort of an East West thing, and it would also something you got to talk about here is the potential of eliminating American and National leagues. Now, the American League and the National League are institutions that are 125 years old. Think about that. They've been around for as long as guys have been picking up bats and gloves. You're talking about eliminating the potential for eliminating AL and NL, and how do you do that in terms of, you think about awards. Awards are tied to players' contracts. You would really need a buy-in from the players' union if you're going to eliminate the American and National League sort of standards. And I don't know if I think a lot of players are like you. They're okay with maybe changing a franchise's name, but when you're talking about eliminating the National League and the American League, they might not buy in on that.
Yeah, I mean, what happens with all the records? The National League records, the American League records. Who sorts all that out? Who is, I mean, that's a big, big step. But I mean, Joe, I couldn't tell you a division in the NFL anymore. I mean, they changed the names there, and they realigned, people, teams went here, teams went there. The only thing that counts is the games. The same thing with the NBA. I mean, it seems like those divisions change every year, right? Or
Right.
almost every 5 years they're renamed. So, I mean, I think you could get used to it, but baseball is baseball. I mean, it's been around longer than any of those sports.
But you're talking about the NBA and the NFL as those are more homogenous leagues. It's very much more of a blended sort of league as opposed to baseball has always been American League, National League, and there was a time when the two never intermingled before interleague play. Players never saw each other until the World Series, that kind of thing. And it's gotten better over time. I think baseball has recognized that there are benefits that outweigh sort of being separate like that, and they've progressed towards it, and especially the development within the last 3 to 4 years of a balanced schedule of every team plays every other team at least once a year, and you sort of need to keep that kind of thing in play here. I think any sort of realignment would have to keep the idea of a balanced schedule intact. It might even have the added benefit. I think some people would say I've seen proposals out there where they contract games off the schedule. Instead of playing 162, you're playing 156 games. 156 game schedule with a 32 team league, you would eliminate the need for 4 game series. Every series would be a 3 game series. Now I know I see the look on your face as a sports writer, as a beat writer for a major league team. 3 game series are perfect. 4 game series is way too much. You're sitting in a city for 4 maybe 5 days, and you've had your fill. But the benefit from a 156 game schedule as opposed to 152, you could play all 3 game series, and if you would start around the same period of time. You could work in an every week off day for every team. Every team would have an off day once a week if that was the case.
That makes sense, Joe. But would the owners are they willing to give up those 6 extra games?
Well,
What, 6 times 30? That's 180. What? I mean, that's a lot of games. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of revenue.
you would think it would be 3 home and 3 road loss
Yeah.
for each team. So you're only if you're an owner, you're really only losing the revenue from 3 home games. And I think with a realignment that would keep teams like Cleveland playing Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Washington, the travel is so much easier for that. And you're talking about a realignment that would have both New York teams playing in the same division against Boston and Philadelphia. The travel there is incredibly cheaper. Really, the only team that would not suffer, but couldn't get out of its own way on that is like Seattle, which is way the heck up in the Northwest, and their travel expenses are astronomical regardless of how you realign. But I think that's a way to pitch that to the owners is, yeah, you'd lose revenue on 3 games, but look at what you're gaining back in terms of not having to fly
Yeah.
to Seattle twice or once a year or whatever. So yeah, I think there's a cost benefit analysis that the owners are really good at running through, and I think they would do that. The idea of realignment, I just to me, losing those rivalries, losing the ability to go to, Detroit, Chicago, Kansas City, Minnesota every year. We know we're going to be there at least, twice a year at this point. It used to be even more, but hey, the players they've got their hangouts in those cities. They've got their places they like to go. I think you get some pushback on the players from that.
Yeah, you might, Joe. I do you really think the players care about the American and National League? I think that if you put a schedule in front of those guys, 162 games, you're playing here, you're playing there. I don't even know if they'd really care. I think it's just another game, right? But who knows? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of traditionalists among the players that they would have some concern about abolishing the American and National League. But in the end, they get paid to play.
Yeah, Max Scherzer would probably have something to say about it.
Yeah.
Again, the vocal ones in the players' union and the guys who would get together, there would be several. The younger guys, and look, Major League Baseball is full of younger guys now, guys who don't have that sort of platform like a Max Scherzer would have, or a Clayton Kershaw, or guys like that who come out and be vocal about it. I think Rob Manfred can endure getting yelled at by Bryce Harper. That's over an entirely different area in terms of the salary cap there. So, okay, so, the idea of eliminating these natural rivalries, but also sort of encouraging, a new rivalry, like you said, with Pittsburgh. It's only a 2-hour drive, man, and it's a beautiful ballpark to go see a game at. I am sure that Pittsburgh would be all in favor of taking Clevelanders' money for twice a year in a couple of 3-game series at PNC Park.
Yeah, I think there's more of a spark between Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, which, we've seen, we play the home and away series every year against the Reds. I think probably the Pirates is more of a rivalry situation.
Yeah, it's sort of well, I mean, bad beer and ugly women, you gotta go to Pittsburgh. I
But
think
then you
that's
got Tito down there too, so
you got Tito,
you got to
that makes it
factor in the
well.
Tito
But how
factor.
much longer are you gonna have Tito down there realistically? The division that they're proposing, or that I've seen proposals of, has the Cubs, Reds, White Sox, and Cardinals all in one division there, and that's a National League or a Western Division sort of setup. So you keep that Cubs Cardinals rivalry, you keep that Cubs White Sox rivalry intact. The Great Lakes division would encapsulate Minnesota, Milwaukee, Detroit, and Toronto, and I kind of like that as well. So that that's I kind of wish Cleveland could be in on that division and maybe put Milwaukee in with the Cubs, White Sox and Cardinals, but I don't know. It's all geared towards that Northeast division where it's, you want to keep the Mets and the Yankees and the Red Sox all in one division so that they play each other multiple times a year and they make, every appearance on Sunday Night Baseball or National League or nationally televised games as well.
Joe, one more thing about realignment. Back in 1994 when they formed the AL Central, Dick Jacobs did not want to leave the AL East. Like we're saying here, he had all those, traditional rivalries with the Yankees and the Yankees in Baltimore and Boston. He didn't want, he didn't want to see those teams only come to Cleveland once, once a year or twice a year. Those were big revenue generators for him. But they moved to the Dan O'Dowd and John Hart convinced him to go to the Central, and it turned out to be a bonanza for the Guardians. So as much as I'm a traditionalist, I guess you can't really turn up your nose completely at realignment.
Yeah, and you kind of have to, play chess instead of checkers and, look
Yeah.
ahead to what could be as opposed to what you would be leaving behind. Just to refute Dick Jacobs there, baseball went ahead and stuck in terms of Cleveland only seeing New York and Boston, once a year. They went that step further, and now it seems like the Guardians only get to play the Yankees and the Red Sox in April when the weather's crummy and nobody comes out to the ballpark anyways. I get the idea, but it was sort of like an extra punishment from the league is, oh yeah, the teams that generate all that revenue and, sell out ballparks all over the place. Here, play the Yankees and the Dodgers in April. That's your punishment in
Yeah,
Cleveland.
when it's 30 degrees.
It's no fun for the reporters either. All right, Hoynesy, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. We will have much more to say about expansion and realignment over the next several. We've got a whole off season coming up to talk about that. So we'll be sure to do that. We will check in with you again after this week, a weekend in Texas where the Guardians really need to win 2 out of 3.
Yeah, Joe. Thanks a lot, buddy.